Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and I'm joined by Mike Smith and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 73, and we get a chance to be the gods of podcasting after watching Thor, Love and Thunder. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Welcome back. We're going to do a little addendum. Last show we had planned to talk about Obi-Wan and Thor, Love and Thunder in the same show. It was just never going to happen. We were overly ambitious, guys, on that one. I set the time. I said maybe we could do 15 minutes on Obi-Wan. We went like 35.
To pull the curtain back for the folks listening, we have our show notes. Every week, Wesley writes like 15 minutes on this topic, like 20 minutes on this topic. Have we ever achieved that once?
Never. Sometimes on What We're Loving, we'll hit the time.
But not on like, we're going to talk about.
No, because people start disagreeing and having feelings, and then it's just like it goes off the rail because somebody gonna feel some kind of way.
That's what our show is about. So
I'm fine with it.
I've learned to just not put so many questions too. I used to do maybe 6 or 7 questions. I often now just do 3 or 4, and that usually is plenty.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think you're a teacher. It's good to have 6 or 7 that have options, and then you just have a menu, and you don't use the whole menu, but you have options you can select based on the vibe.
And we've done that too. We're
so,
learning. We're a real professional outfit here.
Y'all,
guys.
we really have gotten better. I watched some old episodes. I listen to some of the old. Like when I tell people, hey, I do a power my homie.
Listen, we've gotten better. I swear to God,
bruh, you laughing? Well, people will say, "Oh, we'll listen to your pod," and I'm like,
start.
God, I hope don't start at the beginning. I'm like, hey, start at like the Beyonce episode. That's when we start to get more organized, and we had our meeting last summer about organized notes and whatnot. But I listened to some older ones, and I was just like, "Oh Lord, can we just like
one day when we get our when we sign our deal, we'll release the first episode me and Wes did, which was I think just 2 hours of just me screaming the entire time."
It was pretty good. We talked about cats.
We did talk about cats. Yeah. That was the most planned I've ever been for the show. I had like just so many notes and thoughts.
Then we realized we don't need all that. What? That's extra work. Who needs all that? All right, so let's talk about Love and Thunder, the next installment of the Thor individual movies. There will be spoilers, ladies and gentlemen. So our Asgardian Avenger, he likes to be called the mightiest Avenger or best Avenger, returns to the big screen. The opening of the movie introduces us to Gorr, who's played by Christian Bale, kind of phenomenally, actually. He holds his daughter in his arms as she's dying. She's overheated, maybe dehydration. It's not super clear. It's just clear
definitely
that like
dehydrated.
They're out of resources. And it's interesting the way he plays it. There's no blood-curdling scream. There's no outlet of emotion. It's actually really just kind of a sadness and emptiness, a resignation to the fact that he couldn't save his daughter. And I've often felt, and I think probably other people have made this point too, that stories are only as strong as their villain will be, and that villain has to be able to push the main hero. And I don't know, that's just sort of who Gorr was in this movie. He was sort of the foil to, or he was the foil to Thor here. How much did you enjoy Gorr as the villain in this show, Mike?
Do you like sympathize with him more now that you're a father? Does it hit different? You know that Family Guy where Brian adopts Chris and then he just instantly is just like so paranoid about everything all the time?
The dad flips.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but no, not really. Not really. I mean, that guy was clearly
He always had that heart of gold, Mike.
True. There, you couldn't go down from where he was.
He was a maniac. So
I enjoyed him heavily. Savon kind of, I think, explained his thoughts to me, and I like him maybe a little less now. But I think I was just kind of lost in the performance and the visual part of the character, which was, at face value, amazing. Kind of how he went from looking like a normal dude to a true demon. We didn't get to see much. Savon will speak more about that, I'm sure. But I liked him a lot. He also kind of wasn't He was kind of like the Riddler in the most recent Batman. It was like he was kind of just more of like a concept than an actual character with agency throughout the movie. But I love Christian Bale. I think when he had screen time, it was amazing, and I just think that was such a creative villain, like the shadow monsters and just really diving into the cosmic parts of it. I think they did that really well.
And to add on to that, I feel like it's really hard. I would think it'd be really hard. I've never acted to pull that off in a way that doesn't come across as cheesy.
Or like very much, it didn't seem
was
like Christian Bale. Like you weren't looking at that like that's Christian Bale a lot of the time.
A little bit. His mouth has a certain shape to it.
Yeah, but like
the actual mannerisms and
like
itself
he like true. I was actually like there were a few times I like remembered it was Christian Bale. I was like, this is so out of how he normally acts. Like I'm surprised they didn't go with somebody else.
Yeah, and I mean it's sort of like the same thing with Voldemort, right? Like it's so over the top that it could have really gone into this is not good territory. And I think for both Voldemort and for Gore, it ends up working. The way that they direct it, film it, edit it, whatever, I thought it was a really great performance by him. Savon?
It's just to your point, it's the little things on the margins that can make something go from, is this going to be cheesy or just going to be amazing? They did a lot of little things around the edges that really sold him, even from just the glowing eyes to, it was a bunch of little stuff. But that being said, I really enjoyed Gore. Same deal. I thought Christian Bale, acting-wise, absolutely knocked it out of the park. I thought his actual abilities and power set were fun and interesting. You know, they didn't give him something that was just like cartoonishly busted, but something that was still capable, powerful, and a threat to our heroes. I think what I really liked about Gore was that I know you described him as a foil to Thor, but I saw him more as a foil to Jane, where I felt like for them, more of their path and journey and situations were more aligned in terms of people who were dealing with extreme loss, were on a timer, and had these weapons that have called out to them to help them achieve whatever their final goal is. Again, that's not like a bad thing. I thought it was a very interesting parallel I started to draw in the movie.
Yeah, I think they were very, very clear about that, for sure.
Yeah, my biggest issue, honestly, with Gore was that they just didn't give him enough screen time. Like, he's the God Butcher, and we only see him butcher one god on screen, and it's in the very beginning of his intro. Everything else is leftovers or aftermath, which I'm actually okay if you can explore the aftermath of his work, too. They didn't really do that. There's only one scene where you did that, and I was talking to Mike and Kendall about this. The one scene where Thor investigates the aftermath of Gore's destruction, where he finds the giant who was killed, the giant god who was killed, and then an armless Sith, they turned it into a comedy moment where they're making jokes about your arms in Asgard and, you got to actually die in the battle. And to me, that was a great moment to really drive home the danger of Gore, and them making it kind of a bit is something I'll talk more about later. But I think Gore himself was dope on pretty much all levels. They just didn't give him enough screen time. And I think that because of how crucial he was to the ending of the movie and the final act, that lack of development in him made the ending kind of fall flat. And it sucks because I thought the ending was good, but it's just I didn't care enough about Gore to really be attached to what they did at the end. But he wasn't a bad character by any means. They just didn't give him enough time to show what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, something I was reading online apparently was in his original form, he had those tattoos on his body, right? Apparently they wanted to do a scene where he renounces his faith by actually ripping the tattoos off, and that's why on screen he has all those scars, those big kind of like keloid scars on him.
Yeah.
That's where his old tattoos
He cut them off.
Yeah, but I think that's something that for whatever reason, I think they cut it from the movie, but I think little moments like
to
that.
See somebody razor their
arm. Yeah, but point is, it's little moments like that could have really driven home just how the convictions and hate of this character and little stuff like that just didn't give him that weight I wanted at the end. Because I agree, a lot of movies, it's about what you can do with the villain, and they had a lot of potential and they just didn't do enough with him.
I just wish, the only thing I kind of wish they did, and it's not a big issue, I just kind of wish we got a better sense of like how his power came to be and how he developed a little bit, or what he was really after. So I know he was after killing all the gods and all of that, how much was the sword controlling him? How much was he controlling the
Yeah.
sword?
Oh boy, here we go.
And
We're getting
did
into
the
the
sword-
Darkhold conversation again.
Yeah, a little bit, huh? And then kind of
The
how
One Ring conversation.
I wasn't sure if the sword made him like a better fighter in some ways and hand-to-hand, or he already had those skills.
Think of the sword as evil Mjolnir. That's how you should think of the sword. The same way Jane Foster didn't
So it does
really,
make him
wasn't
a better
combatant.
fighter.
Yes. The same way Jane didn't have combat ability. She was literally dying from cancer. But when she used the hammer, because whatever reason, it called to her, she was worthy, she was able to take full advantage of its power. I think same deal with Gore and the sword. His hatred of gods and situation in the sword was very much like a opportunity meets situation thing, and it's like, hey, the sword chose you the same way Mjolnir chose her. You get the power of it, and like the parallel we talked about before. Hey, you about to get a lot of dope power to do what you want to do. It will cost you your life.
All right.
I mean, that's
They
that's
didn't.
the best
They
parallel
just didn't
you can do.
show that at all, though. He would just disappear for 30 minutes in the movie and come back and be slightly stronger and more corrupted.
Yeah, which they kind of say, oh, the sword, and that was that moment of like early movie exposition of the god he first kills is like, oh, this is the cursed sword.
Yeah.
They say it in that little bit of dialogue, so it's like they did explain how it works, but this was very much a don't just tell show. They did a solid tell. They didn't do a lot of show, and I think the lack of show made it harder for us to really get a feel of how powerful is he actually. Because you just don't really get a sense.
I wonder if they felt when they edited it like it would be too much hand-holding. Once you see him attack New Asgard and you can see he can summon these shadow beasts and all of that stuff, I think they were like, well, I think you get the picture of how his power works now. Let's not go through the whole progression of how we're getting here. It just wasn't necessarily important. His growth wasn't important at that point in the movie. His growth was important later in the movie, and so maybe that's what they chose. I don't know. I mean, that's the only explanation I can maybe think of for that.
No, I think you're right, and I agree with you. But this kind of ties to one of my other issues with the movie, which was that is a great scene to kind of showcase what he's capable of power scaling wise, and he did a solid job. But so much of that New Asgard scene was kind of interlaced with humor moments that it kind of made it hard for me to read what the vibe of this scene is. Because on one hand, they're battling shadow monsters, and it's like, oh, these things look terrifying, and but on the other hand, Thor and Jane are making them fodder, and they're just blasting through them like it's Dynasty Warriors, and they're weak. But on the other hand, he's still a threat because he almost kills Thor. But on the other hand, is it a serious scene because they're stealing kids? But then wait, is it a funny scene because Jane and Thor are being so awkward? And I feel like that scene had a chance to really show, hey, this is the threat Gore is, and I know that's what they went for. But they didn't really sell it because he doesn't kill anybody. He just kidnaps the kids. And Thor and Jane are never really in any real danger during that fight. It's not like, oh, we're fighting and winning, but we also taking some licks. Like Thor and them are catching
They
up,
never
having
take
casual.
licks.
They're having casual catch-up combo while just boop, boop, boop. How have you been? Boop, boop, boop. I'm like, yo,
Throughout,
this is
they
the
never
main
really
villain
they never really
attacking
get hit,
Asgard.
right?
Like
Jane
Yeah, the
gets,
whole
really.
movie.
Jane gets beat up a couple times
Does
fighting
she?
Gore.
No,
Yeah.
no, Gore,
Just
but
thrown
not
a
the
few
shadow
times.
creatures and stuff. It's just very, and like I said, the humor interlaced with it makes it hard. Like if there's two characters fighting, but there's a lot of jokes in between, that
didn't mind
lends
that.
itself to a lower stakes, more chill fight,
Yeah.
which is fine. But I don't think that's good when you're trying to establish the threat that Gore is.
Yeah,
I think overall,
that didn't bother me.
It was just kind of tonally all over the place, which I think kind of detracted from it.
All right.
Because there was some parts where I'm like, yo, this is a really dope scene and concept. Are we going for serious or funny? Pick. Neither's a wrong answer, but like, don't try and do both because now I'm just confused.
Oh.
Am I here to laugh or am I here to
when
like, oh shit,
they
sit
try and
serious
marry
now?
both.
Be serious. Yeah, but you
Ragnarok
gotta
had
have
that.
pacing. Yeah, I mean, Ragnarok isn't my favorite, one of my favorite movies.
Oh, all right.
I've been on the record about that.
I don't remember, we know that Hela is terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
She comes into New Asgard and slaughters everyone,
Mm-hmm.
no problem. Thor's not actually there at that point. But when she's fighting Loki and Thor on the Rainbow Bridge, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
The Bifrost.
Yeah.
The Bifrost Bridge? Do they have humorous moments, or is that a pretty serious fight?
Yeah, they
There's
did a
some-
lot of like slapstick
jokes.
stuff with
Yeah, there's
Thor
jokes
or
in
with
that fight.
Hulk
So
and that
I
type
think that
of
can
stuff.
work. I mean, she was
Yeah,
still
but the
terrifying.
comment, I don't know. It's just
That
something.
took away from Ragnarok for me. Like
So-
the final battle having jokes, I was like, man, what the hell?
Oh, I mean, well, I don't know. I think
And like Carl Urban's
Ragnarok-
character coming out with the with the gun.
Yeah, I was just like,
That was cool.
Yeah, but I like that because it was like, I think it's okay to have jokes, but I just think kind of the character of Thor has changed so rapidly because, like, you know, they completely essentially built him from the ground up for Ragnarok. But the thing was that had the North Star of Thor as kind of one of the center points of the kind of battle with Thanos. So they were able to have those really awesome heavy moments while also doing some of the jokes. But I think throughout like Endgame, he kind of turned into a joke himself. And I don't think I'm as bought into that version of the character, which was just is in this movie that kind of manifested as he was just like kind of saying jokes that weren't really related to the actual situations he was in. It was just like, he's such a crazy, wild and goofy guy. Like he's not really paying attention to anything. And that joke kind of got old after 2 hours.
All right.
Yeah, other than the joke, yeah, like a bunch of the humor, you know, I'm okay with. I actually like that Marvel's willing to say, hey, all right, our Thor movies are going to be our funny movies. I don't think there's a problem with that because, if anything, we've talked about how we want these movies to have their own sense of identity and what they are. If you want Thor to go full comedy, I'm actually totally fine with that because I've talked about how a godly character like him is less interesting unless you make him more human and the comedy part works and, oh, he's so out of touch and whatever. That's fine. But it's like, you know, it's like when you got the class clown. You know, there's a kid in class who's funny as hell, but you got to have timing on your jokes. And if your timing is right, you are a benefit and a boon to make everyone joked out. But if your timing's bad, you're annoying and people are like, yo, shut up and get out. You know, and this movie, I think, did a poor job of straddling that line of when to have jokes, when not to, what moments needed to be serious, which moments didn't. And it was, you know, it was unfortunate because it was very avoidable in my opinion. Like there was literally moments I'm like, hey, if you just took this line of dialogue out, this scene would have been 10 times better.
Do you remember what that was?
When Gore and Thor are fighting on the Dark Moon place, and Gore says, call the axe. And he's like, well, once you call the dentist. I'm like, okay, like, that's not a not funny line. It was funny,
dying.
But
I love that
I feel
line.
like this whole sequence on the battle on the moon is meant to be so serious, and so much serious stuff happens that you didn't need to have a joke here when there's so many other moments in the movie that are going to be hysterical. And you gotta, I don't know, I think he did a poor job of just letting it breathe. Like there's lots of funny moments in the movie, so it's not like there was a shortage of that, but you gotta know when to pull it back. And
to me, the parts that needed to breathe were most of the scenes between Thor and Jane. It was really hard to really buy into their relationship without them actually having time and genuine moments throughout the movie. And I know they've had them in previous movies, but you know, It just they didn't spend enough time there as their non-superhero forms. And when they were fighting, like you said, it was mostly just jokey, banter, but not actual serious moments of them having to be vulnerable or them having to really say what worries them. And I know they did a little bit at the end when they're in the hospital, but even then it sort of got undercut. I mean, I think that for me was it. The breath thing I thought was really actually a great timing. I think it recalled the battle with Serta where he's, you know, fighting him and then all of a sudden is like, wait, I'll be right back. You know, in general, I think what was hard about this was in Ragnarok, the movie subverts your expectations for what the superhero movie is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, they do the same thing. They try and subvert your expectations for what the superhero should be, except you're already expecting Ragnarok. And so then you just get more Ragnarok.
Yeah, we know Thor's a comedy at this point. We didn't know Ragnarok was going to be like an actual comedy. And then, unless you really watch the trailer, like, oh, it's a comedy.
Yeah,
but
so you can't...
This one, we knew it.
You can't lean on the, like, oh, we're subverting your expectations when we're expecting that already. And I think that's where they sort of missed the mark here.
Well, were they trying to subvert expectations, or is just their new normal?
Yeah, but yes, exactly. And I think that's the problem. Is that this is their normal?
So that's not them subverting, though.
It.
That's just their new MO, and now that's us having. That's us.
But part of why it worked, right? Part of why Ragnarok worked is you're like, oh, that was new, that was different.
Yeah, but what we're forgetting is that Ragnarok also like had again like.
Yeah, I don't think that's the only problem.
But. No, but I think the comedy works in Ragnarok differently than it does in this movie because of kind of the point the character's at. So it's like they're not only in like, you know, a meta way, like, okay, we're completely redoing the character, so now like every joke is just kind of new. But I think they had so much more emotional weight to the character, and also like we're only talking about Ragnarok. Like Infinity War is damn near as close to a Thor movie without actually being a Thor movie as you can get, and the character, like the emotional heights the character gets to in those two movies, Infinity War and Endgame, he didn't get close to in this movie, which was kind of weird. So like when you're a joke the whole time, it's kind of like, well, what are we actually doing here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they wanted
agree.
it to be about the emotional journey rather than the battle journey, which I think was the older movies, right?
But
this one, it's not about winning a fight; it's about his relationship.
But that's
with
what Mike
Jane.
is saying, is he didn't take this cool emotional journey or interesting.
It was just
emotional
about
journey,
him and Jane, and it's like a love
and him
story.
and Stormbreaker.
Yeah,
Oh, see,
and it's just, I like that part, but it was
Yeah,
just
I thought
like,
Jane was the best part of the movie. That's
but when
why.
you think about, like, that character was traumatized in Infinity War, and he acted like it. Like, he was kind of a dick the whole time. He was angry. He was, like, really, like, upset. And Chris Hemsworth, like, played that really well, and that was a really great part of the character because it had kind of the seriousness of the first two movies, but balanced in that kind of weird, irreverent humor he had. And this time, they didn't even really try to balance it, it seemed like.
Yeah, I just wish they really spent more time with him and Jane and really like got into the. I don't
The movie
know.
needed to be longer. That's really what we're trying to say.
Maybe, and it was already
the movie
2
was
hours.
It was a 2-hour movie, but that's including credits and everything else, though. So maybe you needed some more gore scenes. It definitely needed some more scenes with gore, and give a little bit more scenes to them. Extra 30 minutes of movie. I think that could really move the needle on the issues. I mean, it doesn't change the issue I had with just the jokes being just overdone, but I could make peace with that if they did the other stuff very well.
What was the resolution for Thor's character development? That now he can love again? He's ready to be in a relationship?
The resolution for him is all the trauma he's been through over the course of all the other movies has put him in a place where, because he always loses things he cares about, now he's naturally emotionally distant. Wes, I know one of your other questions talks about this a little bit. That was the role that Guardians were meant to play. He's still struggling to just connect and be emotionally available because he's just been through awful stuff. The theme of this movie is, you need to kind of work on this. Jane comes back in his life to help be something to help him figure that out. But in typical Thor fashion, you still lose what you love. But now, and it's okay. Like, the journey is really about loss is okay. It's just about knowing that it's okay to care. That's the thing. That's why I liked him getting a daughter at the end. I was okay with that. I thought that was actually good for where his story was going. It just sucked because Gore was so underdeveloped that it didn't land for me. I thought this was a case of great idea, not great execution. If you're going to give him a little child and all this to help reseal his life when he's lost his love, cool. Make me invested in the person the dad, so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, the movie's over, I guess he got to take the child now.
The weird thing is, like, all the other stuff post Endgame, they really, like, hammered on this is the character responding to the trauma of the end of that. I don't think they were as, like, explicit about that in this movie, which was kind of weird now that I'm thinking about it, and I think might have kind of helped with the character. Because it's also been a long time, and, like, I was also thinking, like, superhero bloat is real. Like, how much stuff have we got in between this movie and Endgame? Like, a lot. So I think it's
Pretty
like
amount.
I was watching that movie and I was thinking,
Plus a real pandemic in real life.
would I appreciate this movie differently if I had watched Endgame, Infinity War, or, Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame prior to watching it? Because part of it was like, I don't know if I've, like, feel connected to the emotional journey this character's been on up to this point enough that I really understand who the character is now.
Well, part of it was they kind of made a joke of that too, right? In Korg's replaying of it, and then
I
Matt
genuinely
Damon,
appreciate that. I was like,
That was the right move.
Yeah.
but,
that was the
but
right
it was
move.
jokey. So
Yeah,
for you to
that's
say, like,
fine.
I
Yeah,
don't
but
know,
it's like
fine. Yeah,
flashback.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Okay.
Like, I think if you're telling his story, I thought that was a really
and Matt
good
Damon
balance.
and his recap
Yeah,
That was
of
funny.
the moment.
That's
That was
funny. I
funny.
like that.
That was
Okay,
funny.
but,
well,
like,
I mean, but maybe that's why it doesn't hit as much for you. They could have done
What you
that in a
mean?
more serious way, or more.
I know. I don't
for
want
me, it's
that
not the
to
humor.
be serious.
Yeah, it's
I
not
want-
the humor.
Yeah.
It's humor undercutting serious moments. That's two very different things for me. Thor works with humor. I don't really like the other two Thor movies because Thor was boring and didn't have nothing interesting to say. he became infinitely better when they leaned into the comedy. Like I said, that's the move, but it's the class clown effect.
Yeah,
Be funny, but know the time and place when to joke. Joke during scenes where there's characters interacting in casual situations, like him in Asgard being all funny and all that. That was great. I loved it because it's not a high stakes situation. But when you're battling gore and you're cracking jokes, I'm like, yo, man, like, hey, this man is about to kill the love of your life. He just stabbed Valkyrie. He about to take this thing. Why are we making dentist jokes right now?
I'm okay with that because that's how he's been in the past couple of movies, and
That's not true.
He didn't do it in when did that happen?
Yeah, he wasn't like that in Infinity War and Endgame. Like, was he cracking jokes when he was about to chop off Thanos' head?
yeah, no, I guess that's right.
Like, it was a lot. Like, and even then, there's even a difference between being dry and kind of even being slightly witty and just trying to crack a joke. Like, it wasn't even like a sarcastic comment. It was just,
I don't know. This was
Am I
call the
all-
dentist.
this
am
was
I-
all over Ragnarok, and it was the same. It was the
I've
same.
been very vocal about
And I
my
loved
issues
it.
with Ragnarok. That
Yeah,
was an issue.
and I loved it. I did like it here. I don't know. I mean, so that's fine if you didn't like it in Ragnarok and you didn't like it here.
Like, to me, the Thor Hela fight's one of the worst
I'm
fights.
confused why
because
Mike
they're
liked it
just
in
joking.
Ragnarok and didn't like it here.
In here, I think they actually showed less self-control, too. And that's saying, as someone who wasn't even wild about Ragnarok, they showed way... This movie... Someone needs to... What's his, how
I
you
think
pronounce his name?
that's
Taika?
Yeah,
Someone
I
needs
think
to,
he-
someone
I
needs
think
to
he-
reel him in.
Yeah,
Like,
I was
that dude
literally about to. I was
self-indulgent.
literally starting to say, like, I think I'm eating my words, and man might be feeling himself a little too much.
But that's what I said. That's what I said.
Yeah.
4 shows ago.
Yeah.
That's
The
what I
God
said.
City,
Yeah.
the God City was such a dope sequence that
was
I
funny.
loved, but then it
The
just
black
got
and
under,
white sequence was super
amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, like they had. For the record, this movie had way better action sequences than Ragnarok by like a landslide. I do want to give this movie props on the action scenes being better.
After you talk about this, keep going with things that you did like about it. We've talked a lot about what we didn't like about it.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
I do.
okay.
I actually do want to focus on what I like because there's a lot I enjoyed about this movie.
All right.
One, we really got to see Thor in like yo, Thor's a god. He's actually like dummy powerful. So them having him really just be the cheat code for the Guardians, but he's just still having his existential stuff. I love that. Like him just doing the casual yoga split, holding off the two things in the intro.
Oh, I was enjoying that.
You're just getting to see silly, powerful Thor and show how powerful he is, even when he's screwing around. I thought was really good power scaling of, just where he's at. Love that. Like just getting to see Thor be powerful. The God City, I loved. One thing I do like about Marvel, and DC does it too, is having the gods of cultures be actual beings, and you can just tie them into... Like, that's always been a fun concept, because, hey, gods are real. It's just they doing their own thing, which is cool. The God City was dope. All the different deities and different cultures and even different planets' cultures I thought was dope. But even that sequence... Well, no, I felt like there was some moments where it got undercut, but just watching it be so fun was a blast. Watching Russell Crowe as Zeus just be a complete... Can I curse? Him being a complete butt was just hilarious, and that whole thing.
Yeah, I think too hard.
Like that entire sequence. That was genuinely. That was funny. I enjoyed that entire just set piece.
And Valkyrie and Korg and
they are
Jane get up
having-
and take off their disguises.
Yeah,
Some of that. All the women in the place fainting because
that was
Thor
really
is
funny.
just
Naked
ripped.
and a god.
The R.I.P. Loki tattoo on his back.
Yeah.
Come on, man. That
Yeah.
was legendary.
I also think like the God stuff and like the new realm of the cosmic stuff they're doing, it didn't stand out at all. It seemed really natural, which, my favorite word, world building. I think he did an excellent job of that. Like they were venturing in. So I thought Savon was going to like this more because I thought that this was going to pull a lot from comics in a way. The most recent Doctor
that's
Strange
why I did
movie
like
did.
it.
Yeah, it's like they're really, and this is what I was going to say with Darth Vader earlier was that in our last week's episode was that I think a lot of these things now, because there's been so many movies, they've moved along so much and like they've done like the big stories. Now they have to really pull from the comics in interesting ways to tell new stories. But I think what they're seeing is that translates onto the screen kind of differently. But it really worked in this. Like, the world building was awesome. Like, the gods, the eternity, what were those guys? The statues. Those are characters, aren't they? Also,
Maybe?
Celestials.
Yeah, they had Celestials from Eternals in there, which I was like, I saw it and I was like, yo.
And like all of that worked really well, and you believed it existed. Like, the characters interacted. Like, Valkyrie was did so much. I think was such like an underratedly important part of that movie.
Ooh, you're gonna take my point. All right.
Okay. Well, I just think like you would think she's even been moved back a level as a side character with Jane coming in, like relative to Ragnarok, but like her as just essentially being like our guide through that world worked really well. And I loved the God City, like I love the Eternity, and all of that just seemed like a really natural thing, which is very new for Marvel, and could have gone the other way easily.
Let's say something else I love. Oh yeah, and I said this before. Man, Jane Foster was my favorite part of the movie.
Natalie Portman.
I was not, and for the record, and this is not knowing trailer, but even when I heard, they're gonna do the Thor, the Mighty Thor storyline from the comics, like, all right, we'll see what they do. I didn't really have low expectations, but I wasn't hyped up either because I'm just curious, like, how y'all gonna explain this? It was I completely bought just everything with her as the Mighty Thor, I just loved her in the movie. The fact that she got to have this great power, but it comes at a cost. The fact that she gets to be really cool in BA, but there's very much a cost to this, and she has to really make a great heroic sacrifice. It was really surprising to see them just bring Natalie Portman's character off ice after so many years, put her in such a prominent, arguably probably controversial role to a lot of people who just don't like change and think that Marvel movies have these agendas. And she knocked it out the park. Like, Wes, I love when you were talking about how, yeah, she's like awesome at fighting, but her battle banter is trash. And that bit was just hysterical because I'm just like, yeah, I guess if I went into a fight and never battled, I'm gonna probably want to say something cool and sound lame as can be. Just
eat my hammer.
Yeah, but I really was just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just enjoyed that. She was very much a high point for the film that I did not expect to entertain me so much. But my heart really broke when she is trying to hide the cancer and she puts the hammer down and you see her just turn into that. And it was rough where I was happy for her, but man, a lot of her scenes were tough to watch. And I mean that in a good way of like, hey, those were the moments in the movie that had the best emotional weight because they didn't underline with jokes. It was very just like, yo, she's just dealing with this.
She also felt like it kind of felt like a meta redemption, like the Spider-Man in No Way Home, because she had a really bad experience making the Dark World apparently, and had like major issues with the director, and like was not into it again, and like that's why she's not actually in Endgame when he goes back in time and things like that. So like her coming back and then like the character having so much more agency and like being such a focal part was really cool. A funny thing I saw was that, how Taika Waititi's doing a Star Wars movie next. At the end of production for this, well, I feel better about that because after his episodes of The Mandalorian. But he went to Natalie Portman went to him at the end of production, and she was like, okay, well, what are we doing next? And he was like, I'm doing a Star Wars movie. You want to be in that? And she was like, I was already in Star Wars. And he was like, you were?
Like, sorry, my character's like dead. Like, there's just nothing that's just it.
So he doesn't have a reverence for the source material all the time.
No, it's actually, I don't think so. I like him a lot. So I was watching an interview with him, and his whole thing is he doesn't do any research. Like,
oh my God.
when he plays characters and things, he played Hitler in Jojo Rabbit. Obviously, then he was like, I don't need to understand this character. Yeah. Like, I'm just making fun of him. When he did Blackbeard, he was like, I looked up his Wikipedia and saw that no one knew much about him. So I thought, okay, perfect for me. So I wonder, like, he really maybe does need to be reeled in, because at this point,
I don't think I'm a fan of Taika Waititi.
You should watch some of his other stuff and see if you like it. But
no,
like,
it feels like this is big, like the kid who just does his PowerPoint presentation in front of class and just wings it off charisma, and it's like, cool.
Yeah.
Like that's a good skill to have.
You can't do that for every.
But sometimes you hit on genius, right?
That is a good skill to have. But like, bro, that puts a ceiling on how good your stuff can be, and I feel like this. Even with Ragnarok, I thought they were good movies because of his style, but I feel like someone got to reel him back, and that can just, it just feels a little too overindulgent. Like,
Yeah.
Korg just has a little bit too much to say, and
Yeah,
in the
and you
God
know who
City,
plays- you know who plays-
Yes,
you know who
I
plays
do.
Korg, okay.
Yeah, and once I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect
So
sense.
in the interviews, he like jokes.
Like,
so
hey,
he
we
has
didn't need a
this, like,
bow guide.
He has this like joking like arrogance about him, where it seems like it's like arrogance covering like self-deprecation. But he was like, of course I was gonna put my character more in my movies, obviously. Which like obviously he's kidding, but it's also like
He's not kidding if you do it.
yeah.
You can't. No, that's the person who says, haha, I'm joking, but then does the thing. Like, no.
But like he is.
Haha,
like,
I'm joking. Punches you in the arm.
Yeah.
Oh, bro, you still punch me in the arm. Like, this doesn't feel like a joke to me because this is what we're getting. You can't call it a joke if me as the moviegoer
actually do it,
is
yeah.
seeing him shoehorn his Rockman character into major scenes. Like, that's not a joke. That's just the reality.
All right, but
so
Korg
it
is funny.
It
I
is
love him.
interesting because I wonder if he just kind of serves better as a director than maybe just like a full writer. Because I think his episodes of The Mandalorian are excellent, and I'm excited for more of that. But
No, I think so.
the humor, I mean, you might not be a fan, Savon, because the humor is pretty consistent
Too
across.
much felt
all
like
of-
improve. Too many scenes
Oh, it's
just
a
felt
lot
like
of improv.
yeah. I know
That's
that when I've
actually-
read
yeah,
about
yeah.
I've read about how much it's improv, and like there's moments where I'm like, this is an MCU film, and I can feel the improv on this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's not
But
bad,
I
but
think
someone needs
that
to tighten
worked
this
in
up.
Ragnarok a lot, but maybe it just needs to be reeled back in. So we'll see what Papa
And some might
Feige
say
does.
MCU needs a little bit of that improv, given that they really storyboard all of the sets and everything. I just saw a
Well,
thing
people
on
can't
Disney
pick. They
Plus.
want serious, they want funny. They want jokes, they don't want jokes.
Yeah.
It's like
I
whatever
saw
you
this
get,
thing,
people
wait,
want
wait.
less
I
of
saw
it.
this thing on MC or on Disney Plus where it was behind the scenes on Doctor Strange, and they really were saying that they had a lot of some of the sets already built before they even finished the script. They then gave the guy three weeks to finish his script, and then they lucked out that the pandemic hit, and so he had another 6 weeks to rebuild it out and like
Yeah.
throw away the first draft.
And you could feel it in that
That's-
movie. You
that's
could
not
feel
how-
it just felt
that's
like
not
moving
how you make
through.
a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know much about making movies.
This is
but
the
that's
so
why they
this
do
is
that
the
way.
pros and cons of a connected universe. Like you're not gonna
Yeah.
get
I don't mind
a
the
larger
connected part.
universe and perfect like you gotta pick. Well, something has to give.
You
'cause,
can't have 20 like individual Logans, like you.
like that's not how the MCU just
Yeah.
No,
isn't gonna
I
work
think
like that by
that's
design.
fine. That part is fine.
It's just the
what I think
business
is hard.
part
It's
of
like
it.
they've already got the set pieces
Yeah.
in, whether they're going to serve the story or not. Whether they're going to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that's a hard way to make movies, and I know they're trying to get. I think they have to do that because they want to put out a movie every year or so, but. That's a tough way to make movies that are going to be good for a while.
Yeah, I mean that's the con. Like this is the con we've talked
Yeah.
before on episodes of like when you have a larger connected universe. The good is that you have these dope stories that
But
can
3
overlap
weeks to write
and
a
build
movie-
on each other. I know. I'm not denying that isn't. As I said, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying this is you can't have everything. Something has to give. This is what they've chosen to compromise on because, as a whole, like. Good and bad. I'll still take the MCU as it is now than not having gotten it all. The other thing
Yeah.
that we've gotten.
Yeah, well,
so you got to
I-
take
yeah.
the good with the bad.
I think we also really have to look at this like as pre-Endgame and post-Endgame because I just feel like now they're kind of in purgatory and trying to figure out what's happening, and we're getting so much thrown at us, and it's connected now in like a business sense, but it feels kind of chaotic across the board lately.
Like I said, hopefully once we start to feel like once we really get more and more removed from the pandemic, hopefully we'll see some shows that are just completely like their production is completely removed from pandemic delays. Like
I think
others
production,
were.
and I
hope.
also think the closer we get to Secret Wars, the better things are going to get. Like if we
Agreed.
compare this to the early of the Infinity Saga, like those first couple movies, like
yeah,
shit
Thor
was
wasn't.
rough.
Yeah, Thor wasn't great. Iron Man 2 wasn't great. Iron Man 3 wasn't great. There's definitely some.
I like Iron Man 3.
I mean, but like it wasn't Iron Man in Infinity
Yeah,
War, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it wasn't.
just-
It's not a bad movie, but I feel like we'd be talking about Iron Man 3 where we're talking about like some of these other movies
Yeah,
if it came
yeah,
out now.
yeah.
It's not a bad movie, but hey, come on, let's just
So
All right, can I
actually, the movie that got me, and this is gonna, I won't elaborate on this, but I think it'll color my whole opinion. The first MCU movie I saw, I was like, oh, not just like randomly watching, but I was like, I want to get into the MCU was Thor Ragnarok. And then
That was the first one you saw?
That was the first one, and then I went back.
you
and
came
watched
late.
them
You was
all.
a little late
Oh
to the
yeah,
party.
yeah, like
Oh
Really?
damn!
yeah, when I was
Dang,
like
bruh.
22.
Really?
Yeah. No,
Damn,
not
I
even
saw-
22. My third year of teaching.
Really?
Yeah, so I would have been like 25. So
Dang,
that
bro.
would yeah.
I saw Iron Man in 2008 when it came out with my
No,
dad.
I did. I saw like all the movies, but I wasn't like a fan of the MCU and like I'm gonna watch all of these and understand how they connect. I was just like watching. Like I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, yada yada yada. But Thor Ragnarok was the first one I was like, ooh, I want to know more.
Interesting. I wanna. This is a backhanded compliment at the movie, but I thought Valkyrie and Tessa Thompson specifically was really good. And they sidelined her for this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, she did get sidelined, but I think she was an important...
It's not her story.
Important fifth
and
woman,
so
as they say.
If they're going to do that, I'm actually more... After watching the movie, I walked away really feeling like I actually just want to see a Valkyrie movie now.
Yeah. I don't want an Echo TV show. I want a Valkyrie TV show.
Oh, you want a TV show? No, I just want a movie.
You're not going to get movies like that anymore.
You know what I mean? I
get it. Like
I'd want to see. I want to see Tessa Thompson carry a movie. I think she could do it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think her ability to portray both like the fragile, like fragility, the vulnerability, the strength, the humor. I think she can do all of that that's necessary for someone to carry it, and she's great at connecting with other characters. Right, like in Yeah.
And she connects with the audience in terms of kind of like explaining everything that's going on to you. I think without that character having as much of a role as she did, the entire movie would have felt like
she's an exposition dump character she's meant to help with the exposition, which was not necessarily the sexiest role in the movie, but a key one that definitely drives the plot forward. I agree.
Yeah.
But even her horse getting to the fan.
Her relationship with Jane was incredibly important to allow Jane to kind of like demonstrate what she's going through, and then she also like kind of I think reeled Thor in certain ways that humbled the character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and she's still leading the Asgardians. Like she's still their leader. Going through it.
I'd be interested to see her as a lead, where she didn't have to do those connective roles, but actually just was the main person going through her own thing. I'd want to know more about her story.
I saw that they're doing an Echo. Like I saw this. This is kind of a sidebar, but I saw this headline. It was like Daredevil and it was someone else like confirmed to be, and Kingpin confirmed to be in new MCU show. I was like, sick. We're getting Daredevil back. And I was like, they're going to be an Echo, and I was like, what even is that?
Well,
so that's just kind of what
the Hawkeye show.
She showed
no,
up
I remember, but it was just
yeah.
So I just think they're gonna use TV to develop side characters.
I just think comic fans need to also acknowledge, like, hey, not everybody's favorite character is a lead. You know, like it's the Obi-Wan effect. Or some characters thrive as not being the lead, because they are best when they're playing off of other people. You know, some characters are meant to be career role players, and that's okay. But if you try to make a role player a star, they're not going to do it. It's going to flop and look ugly. And, you know, I'm not saying that that's the case with Valkyrie, but I think it's good for the MCU to try and show restraint on who you're going to give the lead reins of a show and who are you going to have as just constantly being connective tissue.
I agree.
Nick Fury is a great supporting character.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a Nick Fury movie.
No, I don't want to see a Nick Fury movie, but I want to see a Valkyrie movie. I think I would think that you've got stuff there to work with that could make a good movie.
There's some cool stuff. New Asgard basically just being a little tourist town, decimation of her people. There's some stuff you could do, like just her leader. Like there's some cool stuff. Her getting over just her, because she still has like just the crippling alcohol dependency and all that. That hasn't changed about her. Yeah. And she still can go through just the wary, burned out, tired leader. So there's definitely a good foundation you can work with for her character. Could we talk about that Guardians question you had?
Yeah. So the Guardians. I thought, and maybe this is just me not knowing anything, I thought that there was going to be a little bit more hijinks and togetherness with Thor and the Guardians, and we would get to see them do their adventures. And we got a little bit of that in this movie, but they're pretty quickly dismissed from the movie. It's just like, and we never hear from them again.
They were super weak, dude.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt definitely like didn't get in shape to do this role,
or like it just didn't seem like anybody was like into it.
No. And so I was wondering, you know, did this actually strike? Did that stand out to you as, this is like, what were they doing here? Did it not seem like they really had a plan for that when Thor joins them at the end of Infinity War or Endgame? It really seems like they're going to be working together. And then in this movie, they take 5 minutes maybe, and then they dismiss them?
Yeah, but we kind of knew that, though. Like, they said that. Actually, Taika said that years before this movie even came out of like, hey, the Guardian stuff isn't about to be a key portion of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he said that from the bounce to let people know, hey, this ain't about to be a Thor Guardians movie.
So I missed that
expectation. Like they established that a while ago, but this is what I'll say because I actually I think the Guardians did exactly what they're supposed to do for the narrative, which was important, which is to establish that Thor is emotionally damaged and unavailable. He's done all the in-game stuff. At this point, he's gotten back into shape, so you would think, oh, you're physically back, you're good. Clearly, it's not. He still has a lot of emotional baggage. The Guardians are meant to be a contrast of this is what a family unit and people who care about each other looks like. You're feeling so weird because this isn't your family. Even say it. This ain't your family. These ain't your people. So even if y'all cool, you're not going to, whatever this emptiness you have, they're not going to be what fulfills that. But they're kind of the impetus to help him realize, oh, I'm missing something in life. I need to figure out what that is. And so they didn't need to be a big part of the movie. If they were any more than they were, it would have been a distraction and taken away from characters we just talked about not getting enough screen time. You're not going to be able to get more Gore and Jane relationship time if you have another 20 minutes of just Guardians cameos. So did they do a lot? No, but I think they made the point of, hey, Thor's an OP powerhouse who can clearly carry the team. That doesn't matter if he's emotionally unsatisfied. So that's why this has to naturally come to an end because...
So he's Kevin Durant.
Actually, yes. That is the best example I could think. Actually, Wes, that is so on the money that I'm legitimately proud of that example. Yes. God. Thor was Kevin Durant on the Warriors where, yes, you've got the success. Yes, you've done this. You've got the accolades. You're powerful, whatever. But this clearly isn't what makes you satisfied. You realize that being around them, you left to try and figure that out. And that's the kickoff of the movie. Of like, all right, let me figure out what that is.
The issue I had, though, was the way
they should have killed Korg, by the Zeus should have had Korg stay dead. That ruined what would have been a great emotional moment, by the way. I'm just going to...
True.
But, Taika couldn't help it. Taika needed them extra lines.
Yeah, you can't kill Korg.
But no, I like the Guardians. I thought they did exactly what they were supposed to do without being a distraction.
Maybe they did, and maybe my issue with those scenes is actually Thor, because I agree with everything you're saying in terms of kind of what the theme is of
He's
that
smurfing.
scene.
He's basically smurfing with his low-level friends.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the character level, the way they characterized him to demonstrate that was they just made him be completely detached and unself-aware, which...
That's the point.
I get that, but if the character is detached for the first 20 minutes of the movie when I haven't seen the character in 4 years, I feel detached from this entirely. I feel like the MCU, or at least what they're doing, or what they should do with the old characters, is leverage the emotional attachment we have to those characters via kind of everything they've been through, but by just kind of repressing all of that and then having the character not really interact with anybody in a meaningful way, I'm just like, well, what's actually happening here? Why am I supposed to care about this?
Yeah.
So
and we love the Guardians.
So here's the thing, though, because the movie did that, though. The beginning of the movie explicitly states out all the people Thor has lost in his life.
Yeah.
They did literally spell out all of his friends, even the ones whose names we didn't know, and they even joked.
They told it well. They didn't show it well.
They literally show them on the screen dying.
No, but I mean, in terms of the actual, you can't just do a flashback, but in terms of, the character, in those opening scenes, really kind of acting in a way that we would expect someone in that position to act, it just it felt way off to me. It's come on, bro, give us something here. It can't just be bits the entire time.
I think you gotta watch that. I think you gotta watch that intro again, because the intro of the movie gave me a very clear dialogue of Thor has basically just been throwing himself into just relationships and battling and sex and all this with the Guardians, and they even show clips of him saying even though he's gotten in shape and done all this, he's still sad. They literally have a clip of him with Star-Lord in the ship. He's literally crying, having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Now, whether you like how they played it and introduced it, that's its own thing, but I think the movie did a pretty solid job of setting up, Thor has lost a lot, been through a lot, loved a lot. He's been around for thousands of years. It makes sense that he's so detached in the beginning because they did, at least what I thought, a good job of just expressing that. And then even if that doesn't do it for you, Chris Pratt's character literally says, hey, bruh, for somebody who's so old, you look real just aimless and you got to you got to get your act together, bro. And he literally said,
I know, I believe you that
I don't even like Star-Lord, bro, but he literally was dropping gems
all the words
saying, hey.
on the page were there, but for some reason, the way it was delivered by the characters, vividly remember in those first scenes, I was just like, this does not feel right. Like something feels off here.
Maybe this is Taika not understanding the Guardians in the same way that James Gunn did, or not believing them in the same way.
What you want the Guardians to do? Like
I don't know. I really don't know.
I wonder. And this is all Monday morning quarterbacking, right? Like I'm not trying to like say that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I my thought and wondering was, I wonder if they could have done it so Thor actually does start to get integrated with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then realize that wait, I'm getting too close. And then pushing them away and going off on his own, right? You get to the same point of, I'm afraid to build relationships. I'm afraid that like these people are going to get hurt. You could have done the same message in a different way, rather than having him be so disconnected right from the get-go of just like, I'm meditating, I'm doing this thing, I'm really distracted. It could have been that he actually does start to learn from the Guardians, starts to get integrated, and then pulls away because he's too scared. And then that moment where he actually leans into connecting with Jane and connecting with the daughter and connecting with Gore, actually, has a different, like, oh, he's overcome the thing that he was really struggling with in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, but that's like another hour of movie.
Yeah.
Like, you're describing two different movies at this point. Like, we literally just talked about how it's a 2-hour movie and Gore and Jane are underdeveloped. How are you going to develop Gore and Jane and Thor and this Guardians thing that you would want to have happen without having like a
and more Valkyrie.
Movie?
I want more Valkyrie.
And more Valkyrie. Like, that's one of those like this is one of those, every single character can't be a main focal point. Something has to go to the wayside.
Yeah, and I think that feels like a waste
we
of the
were
Guardians.
Just so
then.
used to like 8 hours of a show that a 2-hour movie just seems
like
rushed.
that's the difference between now. If this is a TV show, I would feel very differently about that, because that could be a whole 2-3 episode arc. But it's a movie. You got 2 hours. You got a lot of stuff to fit in. Certain characters need X amount of screen time.
Yeah.
Something got to give.
And I wonder if then that just feels like a waste of the Guardians. The Guardians have had their own movies, and for them just to be used as background. I mean, literally background. It just felt like a waste of them.
I mean, but they already have 2 entire movies and appear in a bunch of other stuff. I don't think it's a waste.
Okay, but I don't think you'd see Iron Man be background. Literal background.
If it works for the story, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. We need to let go
I
of
just
the
don't
idea
think you
of
would
just.
Do it.
I mean, well, yeah, but that becomes a business thing too, because I think that there was cases where it would have been better. Like Iron Man being a smaller role in that first Spider-Man movie would have been better, but that's like a Robert Downey doing your contract money thing.
Yeah.
Like same with like Civil War. Like if anything, I think there's some cases in the past of, hey, this character got too much focus and should have been pulled back from the story because it takes away from the main one. But like I don't disagree with you about they could have done more with the Guardian stuff, but when it comes to you can say for any movie, I wish they had done more of this, and it's like, cool, you're asking for a Zack Snyder cut of the movie.
Oh, gee.
Like that, I'm saying that's
like
what you're asking for, which is like cool, but you just gotta recognize, hey, that's not about to be how this movie, because they clearly cut stuff already. Because we talked about the gore scenes, and they clearly had to cut some stuff.
So we've complained about this movie quite a bit. Did you guys like it?
7 out of 10.
I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Also, I didn't like the soundtrack, but I've said that before. I just don't like none. All the like just the classic rock shit. I'm just like, this ain't it for me. I'm just like, oh, cool, we're battling.
There is
Guitar Hero soundtrack, cool. Wake me up.
It's not wrong, because I think all of those songs were in Guitar Hero, literally. At least like Sweet Child of Mine is. But there is a bit of nuance in between what was different from Ragnarok to this one. Was like Ragnarok was like all 60s rock, and this was like 60s, 70s. This was all like kind of more of the 80s hair metal stuff, and it definitely didn't hit the same.
See, my brain can't even make that distinction.
Yeah, I know, but it's like comparing like fucking like the Chronic to like early NWA.
Yeah, and it's just like a cool, if you don't listen to rap, this is all the same, so you're not going, so it's like either way, I'm just like, I'm in the theater like, oh, okay, so this is like the rock battle sequence, cool. Eat my
those songs are just so kind of
overused.
Like, yeah.
I heard them in every, I don't even listen to classic rock, and I'm like, yo, I've heard this in every Super Bowl
Sweet
commercial.
Child of Mine. I mean, it was in freaking Step Brothers. Like, it's iconic, but it's kind of weird to. And I don't know, maybe it's just there's a lot of that right now. Like Stranger Things uses that type of music a lot, but I can get why someone would be kind of just thrown off because those songs are really corny and overplayed.
Yeah, I'm kind of over just like popular songs being overlaid in fight scenes that are just like pop culture songs.
But they
like,
never
hey,
do that in Marvel. Hey. That was his thing. That was like Taika's thing. That was part of the reason he got Ragnarok. He was like, I want to put the immigrant song over it frequently, and like to get rights from Led Zeppelin is really challenging, but they like love the tone of that, so that song comes up frequently. That is an amazing song by an amazing band. I don't think Sweet Child of Mine kind of has the legs a Zeppelin tune does. But yeah, that's a new one. That's classic. I know that's like me just kind of nerding out on
I'll give this movie like a 7.2. It is an entertaining movie to watch.
It went down 0.2 from yesterday.
Yeah. It is an entertaining movie to watch, but for me, and this is kind of like my same criticism I had with No Way Home, I judge movies heavily about how well you stick the ending, and the lack of investment in gore made the ending fall flat for me. So what was an otherwise entertaining movie that had maybe too many jokes for my taste, it ended with just kind of a very just taste in my mouth, because as much as I like the idea of the daughter and that being his sense of purpose and all of that, I just didn't feel invested. Like I said, great idea, just not great execution. And so,
what do you mean?
Gore's entire storyline is the sword has cursed him, whatever, but he's consumed by hatred, right? And he wants to kill the gods. At the end, when he has functionally won, Thor tries to remind him of like, hey, it's not about hate, it's about love. My love of this woman is comparable to the love of your daughter you lost. I thought all that was fine. But the only thing we really learn about Gore is the opening sequence with his backstory, and there's nothing else you really get about him outside of watching him just kind of either do off-screen stuff or some of the fights. But none of that really developed him. Like, even when he's interrogating all the heroes on the moon thing, like, and it's a dope scene for him, but it doesn't really build investment for me into the Gore character of, like, why should I care about him? So it's dope to watch him do his thing because he's cool, but they just didn't give me enough emotional attachment to him outside his opening sequence. And if they had done a little bit more, his change of heart I would have felt it a little bit more, and that would have made the entire just giving my life for my daughter thing just hit home better, but it didn't. So it just felt like they were kind of just going through the story beats that needed to happen, rather than something that I genuinely was like, oh, this is, like in Endgame, they build up that like, oh man, somebody's probably going to have to make a big sacrifice, and Iron Man's sacrifice feels good because there's so many moments throughout the movie where they build your investment in just his journey, what he's had, and it makes it hurt at the end. They didn't do that for me with Gore, so what should have been a really noble decision felt like it was just we need to advance the plot decision. And it sucks because I liked it from a writing view, but the emotional connection for me was not there, and it sucks because I liked the ending, but it just didn't resonate.
It didn't, like, do you think it just never dawned on him he could wish for his daughter to come back? It's like the whole time he's like, man, my daughter's dead. I'm so sad about it. Like, I need to go kill all the gods. And then they're like, hey, have you thought about maybe just wishing for your daughter to come back? He's like, well, I can do that.
It's both. One, the sword was still cursed. Because keep in mind, when he actually gets to the spot to make his wish, he still has won, even though the sword has been destroyed. So at this point, he's kind of broken out of its influence for that period of time before he can make his wish. They were pretty clear about, when she destroyed his thing. I was okay with that. And it's okay to have a character who, hates something more than they love something else. Like, that's not a weird thing. Lots of people hate something more than they love someone else. I think that's fine. But they didn't explore him as a character enough. Like, even when he was in the cage with the kids, that could have been a chance for them to really flesh him out background-wise. And he still was cool with terrifying the kids, but that was a moment they could have done more. But every time he's on screen, I don't know. He's advancing the plot, but they're not really giving us a lot of insight into his character.
Part of what makes a sacrifice so impactful on screen is also the connection and the ties to other characters. Gore essentially has no ties to anybody that's there. And so you're always going to be starting from a lower level in terms of how impactful his sacrifice can be. And they played it so that the daughter wasn't heartbroken by him dying. Right? She doesn't react in a way that says, "Oh, I'm traumatized here."
Yeah, she just kind of appeared and was just chilling the entire time.
Yeah, and so I think that maybe fumbled it a little bit too. But I think you're right. You could have had more understanding of where he was and why this journey is so important to him. So, yeah, that's not a bad criticism.
I'll give it. So keep in mind, entertaining movie, was thoroughly, like, I enjoyed it. To Mike's point, the way they expanded and built on just fun, beautiful set pieces in the Marvel universe, they absolutely delivered on that. Seeing your girl, seeing Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, go to Valhalla was like one of my favorite. I was like, oh, look at her, she get to go to space heaven. Look at you, like, that was nice. Seeing Zeus have lived, which is good because it makes his death not feel cheap. It's like, yo, that's a god. He can still eat that lick. But them introducing Hercules, who I know if y'all don't know in the comics, Hercules is like an antagonist for a pretty decent amount of time. So he's like, I like the setup stuff. The movie was good, but when it's all said and done, too many jokes. Don't really like the rock aesthetic. I won't hold it against it, but it doesn't draw me in. And didn't give us enough time with our main villain. Like, need to develop him more. But solid movie, not a bad movie by any means. I get why someone wouldn't like it. I don't know how long until I watch this movie again.
I don't. Yeah, my friend. I texted my friend Curry about it, and I was like, "It was okay," and he was like, "Yeah, that's my feeling too. I liked it, but at this point, they've got to be pretty bad for me to not enjoy it." And I was like, "Yeah, fair enough."
Yeah. I also temper this all with I'm an MCU fanboy because this is all my comic stuff come to life. So just the fact that these concepts even exist on film is a win in my book, just conceptually. Like, oh, we get Mighty Thor on screen, cool. That's a win no matter how you spin it. So, like I said, it has to be a pretty bad movie for me to just say, oh, I didn't enjoy it. Because for me, I'm going to be honest, the floor is pretty low. Like, you got to really F up for me to just not enjoy one of these movies.
I wonder,
are you just, as a Ted Lasso fan, Wes, just so excited as Roy Kent as Hercules?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Roy Kent.
There's a guy I was talking about yesterday, Savon, who was the writer and then just like willed himself into being an actor that the character absolutely blew up, and now step 3 is Marvel hero. So if we're respecting guys, Brett Goldstein, So if we're respecting, people getting the bag this week on the show, then shout out Brett Goldstein.
Damn right. I will always be a proponent of getting your bag. I'll never hate on someone for getting their bag, unless you just have a bag already in which pay your taxes.
A bag of reasonable size at no expense to other people. Or reasonable expense to other people.
This is my last thought, and something that kind of came up while you guys were talking about Thor and screen time and all of this, is I realized that Thor spent once he put on his armor about 10 or 15 minutes in, he never changed out of the armor.
I didn't like the armor either.
That was some of his, I think that's supposed to be some of his classic comics armor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I didn't, he actually had a couple of costume changes, which was kind of interesting, like for no reason. There wasn't any reason for having a costume change.
No.
But
he saw Jane rocking his old fit. I was like, hold on. Yeah,
I got to level this up.
Yeah, hold on. But look, he even put the little wings on the helmet. Like, hold on, man. Let me flex it real quick. Hey, it's like if Mike came through and just had like a favorite version of one of my old shirts, I'm going to be like, hold on, man. What you doing? What you think he is? Hold on.
Got a one.
Next show, I'm going to have like a purple silk robe on.
Yeah, like if you come with, I'm like, hold on. Absolutely not. I'm coming in with 2 purple silk robes. Like, that's like, I thought that was a...
No, I didn't mind that.
It's like literally like when we're playing Apex and someone uses Rampart, like Savon is like, okay, I'm actually gonna try and make your day worse now.
Yeah, I'll just start foaming at the mouth. Just eyes roll back in my head.
Well, I was just thinking in other movies, they've put Thor in regular clothes.
Yeah, well, that was kind of his whole
show.
like arc in Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame was you're getting humbled and you're just kind of like a
well, even in the first Thor movie, he was in regular clothes for part of the time.
Yeah,
right?
that's the whole movie. He's a dude.
Yeah. So it was an interesting choice that in this movie they chose not to do that, and they just left him as his god form the entire time.
I think
he's never on Earth. He's not on Earth.
It's like these characters are established. They're just like putting these comic book stories on screen and not really making it as like restrained as we're expecting. And it hits in some ways, and I think they're figuring out in other ways. But hopefully, my final thought, and to bring it back, is like, I think whatever we're hitting towards with Kang and Secret Wars and all of that, I think we'll look at these movies differently then.
All right. Any last thoughts for you, Savon?
the Stormbreaker Mjolnir bit was hysterical.
Yeah, that was
my
good.
favorite bit.
I
in
did
the
like
movie.
it. Some people, I read some online reviews, they didn't like it. They thought it
It's
was
just
overdone.
like it's so corny. It's just,
I liked
but it's
it.
like it's funny.
Yeah, but also it's always been a joke that the hammer, it's established that Thor's weapons have a will of their own, because the whole point is that, like that's not a new thing of the hammer has a will. It'll only let certain people lift it. Like the hammer being temperamental isn't a new concept, so I'm okay with them just taking it and making it a great, hilarious comedic bit. Like I had no complaints about that. The axe just being just the whole axe, his weapons being an analogy for like ex-girlfriends was top notch. I loved it. He's like, we went to the bridge. We're like, hey, we're good, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, no man has ever said we're good, right, and was good. So, it's a fun movie.
All right. Fair enough. I think I feel the same.
Some people are not gonna like it though. There's legit reasons to not like the movie, and there's some folk who are gonna say, "Hey, the things that I didn't like heavily overshadow the things I did like," and I don't blame them, because the things I do like are from a fanboy perspective. So I could get why someone who's not just a fanboy would be like, "Yo, this is not a good movie."
Yeah, well, those people shouldn't see it in the first place. Then it was fun. I think even if you're a casual,
We
you'll
should
like
just
it.
gatekeep Marvel now. That should just be our thing.
It's just fun. I mean, if you're
It's
gonna
just
say
wild.
like I
you
expect
like this
it's
more than Multiverse of Madness, didn't you?
yeah, I mean me.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You like this more than, I feel like you're giving
100%.
I feel like you like this more than oh my god.
I
100%.
almost view them as exactly the same. I think.
Oh
I like
my
them
god.
equally. Yeah.
Y'all on some good gas. They got legalized weed in Texas and in Louisiana, because
Nope.
y'all must be pumping some good saying shit like that, saying stuff
I just
like
like
that.
Thor more than I like Doctor Strange. I don't like hanging out with Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange.
I don't have to hang out with him. I'm in the theater.
Yeah. Nah. All right. Let's call it there. We'll save the rest of the antagonism of Savon for later. At confidently_pod on Instagram.
First of all, I'm the main character of this shit.
Savon's gonna be putting up some more questions. Make sure you send him some responses. How did you like Thor? We'll be interested to hear what you guys thought about the movie. But that'll be good. We'll be back next time. We should be talking about what we're loving. We should probably also be talking about Ms. Marvel, because that's wrapping up, and The Boys, because that wrapped up. So we got some content coming your way. It may not be right, tomorrow, but it'll be soon. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Later.
Derp derp.